Peace and love, freedom and decolonization to all African people, those at home, those abroad, and those in the future. If you have two shoes, please sell one and buy sword. If you have two trousers, please sell one and buy sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is no longer on streets. This revolution is in the mind. Because if we are not in charge of our mind, the enemy will take control over our bodies and make us the tools of self-enslavement and self-destruction. Please receive our revolutionary greetings from the African Continental Unity Party. My name is King Kabbalah. I'm happy again to have you on this regular rendezvous. And precisely today, we are beginning a new program that we call the Weekly Updates on African Affairs. This is a program that is designed to talk about some important development on the continent and to analyze them from an Afrocentric perspective. The reason being that we are being fed every day with the news propaganda cooked from the Western perspective, and all this is aimed to confuse us. And as we get confused, we don't even understand how to locate, how to identify, and how to understand our interest from the enemy's interest. And the consequence of that is the leadership that we have on the continent today, which is supposed to be leading the Africans towards the path of liberation, prosperity, and progress. But unfortunately, this leadership works for the interest of Western countries instead of Africa. Hence, we see on the continent continual looting, continual plundering of the resources, so forth and so on. So this program is aimed to create a critical mass of the continent of Africa. As Marcus Garvey said, that it is the mass that makes the nation. And if the mass is illiterate, so is the judgment passed on the entire nation. So we have responsibility to educate, to inform, to trigger critical mind or critical thinking within our people. We are having that responsibility to stimulate our people to seek knowledge, understanding, and to be able to understand the world as it is, not as it is being presented to us, but as it is, right? And from that position, we'll be able to really make good decisions, intelligent decisions on our lives, and most importantly, on the future of Africa. Well, that being said, today we have 3 points on the African updates, African weekly updates. We are going to talk about the Mali and the United States diplomatic confrontation that has taken place recently. We are going to talk about the election in Cameroon, and of course the revolution, the Gen Z, as we call Generation Z, Gen Z revolution in Madagascar. And we are going to end our program today with a little talk about the NGOs and their roles in Africa. Particularly, we are going to talk about the 8 NGOs workers who were arrested in Burkina Faso as on the charges of being spies of Western or foreign countries. Well, let's begin. Now, recently, the United States of America, on its immigration policy, it has decided to put certain African countries, 7 of them, on the list of countries whose citizens must be able to deposit about $10,000 in the American bank in order to be issued the visa to travel to the United States of America. So, of course, these countries, among which Mali was among them, in response, we have heard from the government of Mali that it has also applied the same method or the same policy to the US citizens who are willing to go to Mali. They have to deposit between $5,000 to $10,000 in the Bank of Mali in order to be considered, right, or to be given visa to travel to Mali. And this is very important move, a very bold move that we have to salute on the continent. Firstly, because you see there are 7 countries that have been sanctioned by the United States of America, but it's only one country, Mali, which rises up to strike back against America, which is something that we all salute for the following reasons. The number one reason why this move is very important and it's a bold move is because in every move towards liberation for those people who are enslaved, the first sign or the first action of liberation is to begin or to take the courage to say no to your oppressor. To say no to your oppressor is the first action of liberation for any people who are being enslaved or being oppressed or being dominated by other people. And this is very, very important because the more you begin to say no, the more you gain the courage to strike back to your oppressor, and eventually you'll be able to overcome the oppression. This is why this movement is very important. And the second reason why this is very important gesture for Mali that we have to salute is because it's very symbolic, especially for the future leaders. You see, one thing that we have to tell to our leaders, or what we can expect from them if they are conscious enough, is that even if they realize that they are unable to liberate Africa today, even if they have been so much compromised that we cannot expect much from them in terms of the change of the condition of life, so forth and so on, the least that they can do is to transfer to the younger generation or the future generation the culture of resistance and a culture of fight, so that one day Africa can definitely liberate itself. What do I mean by that? Even though they are corrupt, they are facilitating the looting of the continent with its resources, the least that they can do is to pose some symbolic actions that show the resistance, so that the younger generation can learn from that and continue to resist and to fight back in order for Africa to be liberated. So what Mali has done, it is not just a bold move which has consequences in the present time, but it has also replication in the future, in a way that the rising leaders on the continent today, they can learn from the courage of the leadership in Mali and begin saying no to the Western imperialism, to the Western dictatorship, to the Western hegemonic authority over African continent. They can begin to say no, because saying no, as I said earlier on, is the first action for liberation. You cannot change your condition if you are not able to stand up to your oppressor and say, no, I don't want what you are doing. I don't want the conditions that you are imposing on me. I don't want the reality that you dictate on me. That's very important. And we have to salute Mali for this action, very bold action. However, the weakness in this action is because it is Mali. It's not the Sahel as it's supposed to be. You know, it has been now probably over 2 years that we are waiting for these three countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, to actually to become a kind of homogeneous entity, to solidify their efforts to consolidate their institutions and build one entity which can serve as an embryo for the new Pan-African agenda, which is going to bring Africa together to liberate us. But why do we still have to fight individually? Why do we still have to hear about Mali has done this, Burkina Faso has done that? Recently, Donald Trump proposed to send some immigrants, which America qualifies as aliens, to Burkina Faso, and it was the turn of Burkina Faso to refuse to turn them down. Why can't we say these moves being taken by the Sahel as an entity on itself? Why can't we see this thing being taken from a Pan-African perspective? Because we are doomed to fail if we want to confront a beast such as the United States individually. When you compare the military budget of Mali, economic budget, whatsoever, in whichever way you want to consider or compare Mali to the United States, there's no comparison. So the only chance that we have to succeed is when we are able to bring our efforts together and to fight together, right? So the weakness in this response that we can highlight and, of course, send our message to the leadership in the Sahel to speed up the process of consolidating their countries or bringing their countries together to form an embryo of the United States of Africa that we all want and expect. Now, the second update is in Cameroon. In Cameroon, if you have been following the news, you have heard that there was elections in Cameroon, through which the President Paul Biya has been re-elected for an eighth term in Cameroon. And this is very awkward and actually beyond awkwardness, because this is a grandpa who is about 92 years old, who can barely remember his name and remember his team, but is still very bold and very determined to lead Cameroon. Where exactly? Because he has been in power for more than 40 years, and because the life expectancy in Cameroon is roughly around 40 years or 45, it means that there are people who are born in Cameroon, who grew up in Cameroon, who became parents in Cameroon, and who died in Cameroon without having seen a change in the leadership of that country, because it is Paul Biya since I don't know 1980 something who has been in power in that country. So in my mind, I'm asking, is this mean that Cameroon has not been able to produce some great minds, some great thinking people who can lead the country to where it's supposed to be? It's only Paul Biya. And why do we see some kind of acquiescence in Cameroon towards Paul Biya and his dictatorship, or his, I don't know, mysticism that has been making the whole of the country kind of unable to stand against him? On the other side of Madagascar, as I've said, we see a reality which is completely different, right? We see the Generation Z, which has been able to mobilize itself and kick out of the country the president of the country, who has been helped by France to leave the country, to flee the country. Actually, probably is in France as we're speaking right now. So this is a day and night situation on the same continent. Why do we witness a level of acquiescence in Cameroon that we cannot explain, at the same time witness the courage, determination of these young people in Madagascar to be able to kick out of the country their leader, which they found incompetent to lead them? What is the best that we can talk about Paul Biya in terms of his leadership of Cameroon for more than 4 decades that he has been into power in Cameroon right now? So I think the lesson here is that fear is the currency of oppression, and one is able to be fearful when they realize that they are alone, when they are not organized, when they are not working in the properly structured organizations so that they can work together. Because if you are organized in proper structures, fear will not overtake you. You'll be able to have the courage to stand against the system, and that's what we have seen in Madagascar. These young people were able to stand up against the government because they were organized, and because they were organized, the army was able to help them to kick out of the country the leaders. But in Cameroon, there's no probably organizations. Actually, we have tried to penetrate Cameroon with our organization, and it was very difficult because people are firstly fearful, people are acquiescent, and these two things are just the currency of oppression. So the oppression that our people go through in Cameroon, either in Congo, Brazzaville, in other countries around the continent, is because the masses of the people, the young people, have not mobilized their energy and organized that energy to change the country. And that's the reason why our leaders do not respect us. They rather listen to their masters in the West, but they don't pay attention to our cries, to our suffering, or to our voices. That's reality. So we need to kick fear out of our hearts by organizing ourselves, by mobilizing the masses to organize in order to fight this battle. Because if we have to expect these leaders to change one day and begin to do the right thing for us, it's going to be the day that we are gone, we are dead, and nothing like that will happen. So this is what we have to learn from Cameroon. And to close this point, I'm wondering why the West has never pushed its agenda of democracy in Cameroon, in Congo Brazzaville, as it has been pushing it in Libya, in other countries on the continent. Why is France not been able to push his democracy in Cameroon, as it has been pushing in Congo, in all these countries where if elections is missed, or if the leader stays in power for more than 5 years, is being already pressurized to organize elections, is being told about democracy. Why don't we see this in Cameroon? Simply because the guy in Cameroon is the agent of French imperialism in Africa, or of the Western imperialism in Africa. So therefore, democracy does not matter. As long as you work for them, democracy does not matter. But when you don't work for them, whether you are democratically elected, it doesn't matter. They will hunt you down, they will kick you out, they will invade your country, they will do whatever they've been able to do in other countries around the world. Well, our last update is about the NGOs that are spying on African governments. This has been the strategy that Western powers have found recently to infiltrate the governments on the continent in order to destabilize them. The first strategy is to go through military training. They take your generals, your colonels in their countries, they train them, and they train them to betray their government, to be loyal to France. That's what they've been doing. That's how lots of coup d'etats in Africa were easily implemented or executed on the continent, because the people who carried those coup d'etats, right, were the people who in most cases were trained either in the US or in France or in England. So that strategy is becoming more difficult now. So they have turned towards the African people, the people in the villages, through their NGOs, right? And this is what is happening. So there were 8 people arrested in Burkina Faso for spying for foreign governments, right? Giving the position of the army, the strategies of the Burkina Faso armies. As you might know, Burkina Faso is suffering from internal terrorism, which is being supported by France and other countries overseas. So the information, because French armies has been kicked out of Burkina Faso, so the information is passed through these NGOs. These are the people who work to collect information to send to France so that France can coordinate with the terrorists and destabilize the countries. And this is what is happening in most African countries today. So if it is not about passing on the information to destabilize the country militarily, it is about instigating the population with some fake ideologies to resist the government, especially those governments that are working for the interests of their people. And we don't know exactly the full length of what has happened in Madagascar, but we'll definitely get to know what is taking place over there. But in most cases, when you look in countries such as in Gabon, whatever that was called there as revolution, it was in essence the revolution championed by the Western powers. The same thing as in Guinea, that was a revolution championed by the Western powers. The soldiers that are in power in those countries were trained in France, were properly trained in France. So Western powers are still using these strategies. They can train your soldiers for that purpose, or they can infiltrate your country and begin to instigate your people to resist and to stand up and to rise up and to destabilize the country or the program that the government has for its mandates or for its governance period. So these are the things that we need to understand, or we need to understand from the current development on the continent. With this, we thank you for your time, and we say peace and love, freedom and decolonization. We have come to the end of our program today. We say that if you have 2 shoes, please sell one and buy a sword, because now it is time for revolution. And this revolution is in the mind. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.